Put simply, accounting is how a business records, organises and understands its financial information. But in a modern world, accountants are much more than this. They are strategic thinkers connecting every facet of business, considering the impacts of finance, the economy, the law and even the environment. By analysing and assessing information, accountants can tell the story of a business's performance and position over time and where they stand compared to the greater industry. An accountant can help an enterprise to thrive and flourish while also sounding alarms when something's not right. It can even be used to investigate crimes and to retell stories of historical events. A world without accounting would limit the ability of businesses to exist at all. There would be no stock exchange, no borrowing or lending, or taxation systems. An economy without accounting would be like a sailor without a compass. We wouldn't know which direction to go. 1494. Summa, also known as Luca Pacioli, Leonardo da Vinci's housemate/maths tutor, codifies the rules of accounting in a simple language that everyone can interpret. Modern banking was invented in Venice, the principles of which we still loosely follow today. 1602. The first public company was formed, the Dutch East India Company. For the first time in history, the general public is able to invest in a company and own a small part of a big operation. 18th century. The Industrial Revolution utilises accounting to manage and optimise mass production, allowing for commercial expansion to flourish. Modern day. The most recent development in accounting is the internet, and with it, the introduction of real-time transactions and general ledgers. Even more recently, the development of blockchain technology is evolving the use of accounting as we know it to develop cryptocurrency. In a post-pandemic world, accountants play a huge role in helping businesses navigate their path through rising capital, understanding government support, and rethinking the way they approach business. Accounting can be, in its simplest form, public practice and industry/commercial. On public practice, you contractually work for an accounting firm offering commercial services to other businesses. As an industry/commercial accountant, you work internally with a business, government, or a non-for-profit on their finances. Each of these has its own set of fields, and there can be some crossover between roles and responsibilities. There's a range of different roles an accountant can fill. For example, as an audit and assurance accountant, you are responsible for assessing the financial statements of an organisation and its financial status. As a corporate and business accountant, your role is to ensure that companies efficiently and effectively meet all reporting obligations. While this is just an example, there are many other roles in a very dynamic accounting world. Here's an example of a career path for an aspiring qualified accountant. Undertaking an accounting degree. Entering the workforce, learning if public or industry accounting is right for you, and what specialised field you're interested in. Understanding your options and setting your route. From graduate to assistant accounting, to an accountant to the manager, to director or CFO. Not all accounting careers follow a linear path. Obtain a professional qualification to become a member of a globally recognised accounting body. These pathways are well defined, but from an executive level, there is often crossover. For example, a CEO of a major company may have taken either of these routes to get there. In the modern world, there are a lot of exceptions to this rule, and the role of accounting in other unique fields, and even freelancing, is always an option. What it takes to be an accountant, and what will I learn? An interest in analysis, order, and commerce. Accounting is the guiding principle of business. Every step is contributing to the health of a financial entity and guiding the decisions it makes. A basic understanding of global markets and economies, principles and tools you will use to make business and monetary decisions. Your understanding of business in general and the economies of the world will grow. Being a great communicator who is driven by data and statistics with a strong ethical behaviour. Learn more about how to get started today.
Good afternoon, everybody. From wherever you're joining us today, welcome to another Insider Guides International Student Webinar. Today, we're discussing the world of accounting, a career of the past, present, and future. Every industry needs accountants, whether you're keeping the books balanced, a financial advisor to celebrities, tallying the votes at the Oscars, which is a true fact, or helping solve crimes as a forensic accountant. To begin today's webinar, I'd like to start with a welcome to country. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters, and community. We pay our respects to them and their cultures and to elders both past and present. Let us walk together and take care of earth and water as one. I'd also like to thank our two sponsors today, PTE Academic and the ACCA. If you're interested in studying accounting or starting your career as an accountant in Australia, then you might need to provide proof of your English ability as a part of your visa application or as a part of a skills assessment for professional registration. PTE Academic is accepted by the Australian Government, as well as by Certified Practicing Accountants Australia, CPA Australia, and the Chartered Accountants Australia and New Zealand, CAANZ, as proof of English ability. With results typically available within 48 hours, you can get your application started sooner. You'll find a link in the chat for more information. I'd also like to thank the ACCA. The ACCA are committed to your success. That's why they are the #1 choice for accountancy students worldwide. Join the most forward-thinking accountancy body and start your journey today. Check out the link in the chat for details on how becoming a member can benefit you. Now, I would like to thank our wonderful and diverse panel of guests. So to start off with, we have Matthias. As Technology Director at Acclaim Australia, Matthias represents a portfolio of foreign technology and biotechnology clients in Australia. He's a chartered accountant, holds a Bachelor of Commerce from Flinders University, and is currently pursuing further education in software engineering. Thank you so much for joining us, Matthias. There he is. Hello. Next up, we have Yana. Yana is a relationship manager at CPA Australia, responsible for working with employers in supporting staff through the study of the CPA program and CPA members through their continuing professional development and career pathways, as well as connecting employers with graduates. Thank you so much for joining us today, Yana.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Morris. Morris heads up ACCA in Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, and Oceania. Having worked in the education industry for the past 20 years and working closely with international students in the last decade, Morris is passionate about empowering people with the skills and knowledge for the accounting and finance industry. Being a migrant to Australia and having worked in a number of countries, he values the experience international exposure has equipped him with to tackle different and complex situations in his roles. Thank you so much for joining us today, Morris. And finally, we have James. James is Head of Internships at Performance Education, managing the Corporate Partnerships and Placements team. He holds a BA in International Relations and uses his experience from the media, renewable energy, and education sectors to develop strong corporate partnerships and deliver the best possible outcomes for graduates completing internships in host companies. Having started his career by undertaking internships in both China and England, he is passionate about helping young professionals develop the necessary skills to progress in their careers. Thank you so much for joining us, all of you. We will get started on today's Q&A. I would like to remind all of our audience members today that we will have time later in today's session to answer your questions live. If you could please use the Q&A feature, you'll find that on the right-hand side of your screen, to ask a question of any of our panelists. We'll be providing resources and links in the chat, and this webinar will be recorded, so you can come back to it later or share it with your friends who weren't able to make it today live. Now, to start off with our questions. So first question today is for you, Morris. Why should international students be looking towards a career in accounting nowadays? Has COVID impacted the industry and the opportunities that are available to international students?
Thanks very much, Alex, and good afternoon, everyone. It is a privilege to take on the first question, and also a very good one. Now, if I may just qualify the question as well, and I'm sure my colleagues from CA and CPA would agree, the accounting profession is certainly one for all students to consider, and not just international students. As we have seen in the video earlier on, accounting has been around for thousands of years and has existed for the purpose of providing accountability. To this day, the accounting function remains one of the most important in any organization to ensure that financial information is properly recorded, interpreted, and communicated to stakeholders. And we have also seen how the accounting profession has evolved with different stages of the Industrial Revolution. In the current IR 4.0 of smart manufacturing, with digital technology, machine learning, and big data, the role of accountants have taken on even greater responsibility in detecting fraud and cybercrimes in the cloud, using machine learning and digital analytics tools to provide clients with predictive analysis rather than just historical reporting. We've also seen very clearly during this pandemic how small businesses are really hard hit by restrictions and border closures. Accountants now play an even more important role in supporting small businesses by giving them advice on access to government support, helping them in their transformation journey, or providing insolvency support. At the start of the pandemic, my colleagues from the local professional bodies were also putting in a submission to the government to advocate that accounting profession should be considered essential work, as indeed there has been increase in work for many accountants during this period. Globally, we have also seen government increasing efforts on regulations and compliance, particularly with complexity arising from tax evasion from international organization or digital currency, fraudulent access to government funding, and cyber crimes. Hence, there's a lot of work that's been cut out for accountants, and this is definitely a good time to consider a career in accounting if these values resonate with you and if you're excited to contribute towards a profession that's focused on providing values to public. I think COVID-19 has definitely impacted the accounting industry, and just like any other industry at the start of the pandemic, we have seen a number of Big Fours laying off staff because there's less work that's coming through due to restrictions and also just a consideration for financial sustainability. However, by the end of last year, we have suddenly seen a number of positions that are opening up at Big Fours again. As I mentioned earlier, more work's coming through to support small businesses during this road to recovery. ACCA launched a survey at the start of the pandemic and also just a follow-up PAL survey 6 months down the road. Many of our respondents have identified opportunities in supporting businesses in business continuity and resilience, digital transformation, and supply chain transformation. I think a lot of international students, and in fact, even domestic students, tend to think of Big Fours and larger corporates as entry to the industry. But I'll definitely suggest that you also consider some of these smaller accounting firms in your neighborhood, because they tend to be the ones who are needing support from businesses in the community. And because the small business could only afford going to some of these smaller accounting firms rather than the bigger ones or the Big Fours. So, you really have to be quite proactive and resourceful and take the initiative to reach out to some of these smaller firms. But there's no better time than now to really consider a career in accounting.
Thank you so much, Morris. You really covered such a broad overview of the entire accounting profession. That was wonderful. If anyone listening has any questions for Morris, please know that you can use the Q&A function to send him some questions. So next up, Matthias, as a former international student yourself, can you please share with us your study journey and your experience in building a professional career in Australia?
Sure thing, Alex. So it's been a while since I arrived in Australia. It was back in 2003, and I always really enjoyed business and entrepreneurship, so I decided to study a Bachelor of Commerce for a major in accounting and finance. While I was studying, like most international students back then, I had a job in hospitality, and while I worked out as a bartender. And while I was working in there, I asked the manager if he needed any help keeping their books, and that's how I got my first industry job while still a student. After I finished my studies, I joined a large international accounting firm, Grant Thornton, and worked through a few different divisions in there. I worked in audit, then corporate finance, and then international business services. And while I was working, I was also studying towards my industry qualification to get the CA badge. And when I became qualified, I quit to do my own thing. I co-founded and helped grow a business and took a few paid directorships, primarily in technology and biotechnology. Some of them I still hold today. So that's like 15 years of accounting career. I spend most of my time consulting for foreign companies that are entering Australia. So I help them set up the structure in here and decide how to finance and build their business here in Australia.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Matthias. And it's so interesting from, humble beginnings in hospitality, you were able to move on and progress your career and, be the co-founder of multiple different companies. That's incredible. And I think it shows our audience today that, there are opportunities everywhere, and it's a case of, networking and putting yourself out there. It would be really interesting to know where everyone is joining us from today. If you want to pop in the chat and let us know where you are joining us from today, I think that would be really, really interesting. I will then move on to Morris again. What are the different roles an accountant can have? Do students specialise early on in their studies, or do they learn the general skills first and then move on to becoming a specialist in one area?
I think it would be a fallacy for us to think that anyone who does an accounting degree or join an accounting professional body would necessarily need to become an accountant or work for an accounting firm. The knowledge and skills of accountancy and just the tenacity for someone to qualify as a member of a professional body would go a very long way. I think it's a great example with Matthias with us here today. So even though he's a chartered accountant, his title is technology director. Anyone could put that knowledge acquired from your accounting studies into running your own business. You could combine accounting with IT knowledge to support organization with digital transformation, or use your accounting knowledge in a HR function, reviewing rewards and remuneration for employees. So while students are doing the accounting degree or their professional qualification, be it ACCA, CA, or CPA, they will cover the core technical and professional knowledge, which generally covers areas like financial accounting, financial management, management accounting, taxation, business law, business technology and information systems, as well as audit and assurance. And depending on how well you perform, or if you take a liking to any of these fundamental areas, most professional qualifications will then allow you to choose an advanced level of this specialization. So if you like audit and assurance, for example, you can take an audit and advanced audit and assurance to ensure that you have more specialized knowledge in that field. Some graduate positions would put you through a rotation, so you get a few of different sectors of the industry before making a decision whether you like to further that career. Because you have also covered different areas of accounting in your studies, you could move from one area and pick up new skills. We talk a lot about agility these days, especially with the unpredictability of the pandemic. So it's very important for you to be quite agile in your role. So you could explore extension of roles. For example, we've got members who started working in audit, and from there they found their passion in forensic accounting and started their own practice. You could also combine accounting with your own passion. So we've got a member in Singapore who is CEO of the Luxury Network because she enjoys luxury brands. We've got a member in the UK who's the CFO for Mercedes Formula One, for obvious reasons, if you like Formula One. And here in Australia, one of our members used to be the CFO for Cricket Australia, and now is the Chief Operating Officer for Netball Australia. So you can actually really try and tailor that to your needs, depending on your own passion. So I would say that the sky is the limit, so it's really up to you to utilize your accounting knowledge as well as the network that you've created. And it doesn't mean that you definitely have to go into some of the traditional accounting roles.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Morris. So Jana, what qualifications would I need to become an accountant in Australia? Just sort of on a basic level, if we have anyone joining us today that hasn't commenced their studies yet, aren't quite sure the approach that they should be taking, what qualifications would a student need?
Definitely to be recognised as a professional in accounting, you do need to undertake some form of formal qualification, being a bachelor's degree and majoring in accounting. So that could be, across business, accounting, finance, commerce, and then majoring in accounting. So definitely a bachelor's degree through a Australian university is the way to go in terms of upholding that rigour of what a professional accountant looks like and is expected to, the level they're expected to enter at with employers.
Fantastic, thank you. So my next question was going to be, can you become an accountant without a degree? But it's kind of sounding like not really.
So, accountants are critical to the operation of any business. And so whether they work in-house or employed by an accountancy firm, they provide a valuable service in the financial operation of all businesses. And we can see that across, the examples that Matthias and Maurice have both provided. And professional bodies such as CPA, CANS, IPA and ACCA all regulate the accounting industry here in Australia and sit under the International Federation of Accountancy, which is known as IFAC. And so in order to qualify for entry into, our programs, you will need to have a completed bachelor's degree with a major in accounting. And it's important that for your career and a regulatory requirement of the accounting profession, that in order for an individual to produce certain financial reports, particularly any that will be analysed externally, you do need to be accredited by one of the above bodies and to hold a professional designation, which obviously then for that to occur, you do need to be degree qualified in order to do that. And that's for being in the best interest and career potential for the individual to have completed both an accounting degree and also a professional designation.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jana. My final question kind of regarding qualifications and getting yourself started in accounting. Do accounting qualifications remain valid overseas?
Yeah, definitely. So particularly in Australia, we're seen as a benchmark in terms of our higher education and bachelor degrees, and it's regarded as a highly as meeting core outcomes and requirements and standards globally. So having a bachelor's degree, and a professional designation being globally recognised across other professional bodies as well, holding mutual recognition agreements, and being, I suppose, highly regarded across international employers. Having a valid accounting qualification, being an Australian bachelor's degree, does hold you in good standing for international employment and travel.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Jana. Thank you so much for welcoming James now. Oh, sorry.
Alex,
someone. Yep.
Do you mind if I make an extra comment on that question as well?
Absolutely. Go for it.
During my time working at a large international firm, one thing that was very common is for the Australian staff to go to other jurisdictions during their busy period. So, for example, I had a lot of friends that every year used to go. The firm used to send them to the UK or to Canada during their audit busy season in there. And the other way around, we had people employed by Grant Thornton in Canada that would come to Australia and help us during the busy season here in Australia. So there is a lot of mobility for professionally qualified accountants, and that happens in most large firms.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Matthias. We've actually had an interesting question come through our Q&A, and I anticipate it's something we may get multiple times in today. And it's interesting because we have someone here from the CPA and we have someone here from the ACCA. Someone said, what's the difference between the two of them? And they've said, which one do you recommend? I anticipate our wonderful panelists will recommend their own. But it would be really interesting if we could get an understanding of what the difference is between all of these professional bodies. Morris, did you want to take it away? And then Jana, if you had anything that you wanted to add?
Yeah, I certainly can do that. So I think at the end of the day, Jasmine, you probably need to do a little bit of your own research as well. All professional bodies are designed to ensure that our members are industry ready. So in terms of the qualification that we provide, I mean, there will be subtle differences. So it's also important for you to sort of curate the offerings that the professional bodies offer. So have a look at the content, have a look at the coverage, the type of assessment that's involved in the qualification. It is also important to sort of look at the network that you can get with the professional body. And it really depends. I mean, if your aim and if you're very, very certain that you want to be in a specific jurisdiction, then I think choosing a local professional body would be suitable. But if you're looking for a global career, and if you think that you might be traveling to, a number of countries over your career, then I think choosing something that's global might sort of resonate with you. That gives you that portability in terms of your professional body. And I think with the ACCA as well, because we are a global body, you could start in one country and continue with your qualification basically anywhere around the world. So it gives you that flexibility. You could start in Australia, you could do a few subjects in Malaysia, in Singapore, you can go to China, and it's the same exam taken at the same time all throughout the world. So I think with that itself, it's really the global mobility.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Jana, was there anything that you wanted to add to that discussion?
No, I agree with everything Morris just said, and CPA also are able to offer that exact same flexibility across the globe. And I think, at the end of the day, it is very much doing your research and seeing what fits with you. And I think it's also being mindful of also, the mutual recognition agreements and partnerships that, whilst we are all in competition with each other, we do also have quite a few mutual recognition agreements to help that transition period as well. So, I think it's just important that you do your research and you reflect on which professional designation is going to provide you with what you need. And, we're more than aware that there are external influences that do come down to that final decision, but ultimately you need to know what's going to work best for you and where you're wanting to transition your career.
Fantastic. Thank you so much to you both. So my next question is for you, James. How many years does it take to become an accountant in Australia?
Yeah, so as Jana's already sort of touched on, it really depends on your sort of pathway, and also depends on whether you're going to be doing it full-time or part-time. Typically, most students coming through would be having a bachelor's degree, which would be full-time for 3 years in accounting, and then be progressing to look at accreditation for CPA, CA or IPA. Alternatively, you can complete a postgraduate qualification, such as a Master's of Professional Accounting. And for that, that's typically 2 years full time. And then again, you would move on to that sort of accreditation part there if that's the avenue that you're looking to go down. As Matthias said, sometimes people will take a different route and then maybe sort of come back into the accounting depending on what they want. But yeah, it really depends, I think, on that sort of journey, but anywhere from sort of 4 years and over. And I think from a CPA perspective, it's about 18 months part-time after you've got your qualifications.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, James. So we've actually had a question come through the Q&A that I'll direct to you quickly, which is a Tafe diploma a stepping stone to a professional accountant's career?
Yeah, I mean, it can be. I think it really depends on I suppose, yeah, that trajectory that you're trying to find. Obviously, there are requirements from a CPA or CA perspective as to what that kind of looks like. And obviously it is important to have that in place and sort of know what you're working towards in order to get there. But a degree is that sort of critical level in order to progress.
I might just chime in here,
Sure.
if you don't mind, Alex. I think with the ACCA qualification, one of the key, I suppose, belief for us is not creating any artificial barriers. So we don't actually have the requirement to actually complete a bachelor degree before you could start the ACCA qualification. We do have access, what we call an open access to our fundamental exams. So for any students who have actually completed a diploma in Australia, for example, you could do some of the fundamental exams before moving to a strategic professional exams. So there is an option for anyone who's doing a diploma to actually become a qualified accountant through the ACCA pathway.
Thank you so much, Morris. So my next question is for you, Jana. Oh, no, sorry. I have a second question for James. My apologies. What are some of the general pathways post-graduation for accounting students?
Yeah, well, I think this comes back to the accreditation piece. So obviously, once they've gained either a degree or a master's in accounting, it's sort of looking at that next step. Most of the graduates that we're working with are on that pathway towards getting the accreditation. So they'll be doing that alongside securing permanent employment in their sort of chosen field. And then that will give them the ability to actually put the accounting principles into practice, and obviously to gain those modules and progress in that.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, James. So now jumping back to you, Jana, we see this question a lot, and we've also gotten it quite a few times in our registration questions. I'm interested in how much accountants actually earn in Australia and how this compares with other professions more generally as a livable wage in Australia.
The accounting wage is actually very competitive and very livable for those who start out, let's say, from a graduate level. So on average, an accounting salary, obviously it does fluctuate depending on your experience in the industry sector you're in. But for example, if you're a graduate in undertaking a public sector or public practice firms, graduate levels for salary tend to be around the $60,000 per year. So it is quite livable and it is quite a good start for those first 3 years of your accounting experience. When you start to work towards, 3 to 5 years worth of experience, you then start to obviously take on more responsibilities, and the average salary for that, 3 to 5, 8 year mark is just under 90,000 a year Australian. And the average annual income of an experienced senior accountant in Australia is approximately 175,000 a year. So, there's quite a barrier. There's quite a, big pay scale there. And your public sector, public practice, and then all your private and corporate firms do place a lot of value on their accounting staff, and also the graduates, and how they want to train them, and also the rhythms they put them in, and the rotations they expose them to. So, if you're lucky enough to be a graduate and get into that first 3 years of employment at that $60,000 mark, it's a pretty healthy sum to start off with. And really, your earning potential is dictated by obviously the industry you're in, but also your career progression, your ongoing professional development, and where that takes you. But also the employer themselves, where they invest in you as well.
Thank you so much, Yana. So our next question, Morris, is, we mentioned that accounting is a profession of a past, present, and future. What could the future look like for someone who is studying accounting now and looking ahead at their career goals? What are some of the in-demand areas of accounting that they should be looking to?
I think that's a great question, and something that I'll be able to respond more definitely if I've got a crystal ball. Based on the research that ACC has conducted back at the start of 2020, we've got this paper called Future Ready Accountancy Roles in the 2020s, if you're interested to read more. We've identified various trends that are sort of changing the accountancy career, from now into the future. So the rise of digital is certainly clear. We know that traditional ways of working will no longer hold water. So aspiring accountants need to have great digital quotient and be very savvy in using cloud-based accounting technology, data analytics, and visualization tools that will help them perform their roles, which is also something that I mentioned earlier about, being predictive, looking into the future, rather than just looking at historical data. So as a result of this digital transformation, connectivity has also increased quite tremendously. I think none of us would have known at the start of 2020 that most of the events for the year would be conducted online. But we've now seen that companies are coming to terms with working from home as a necessary option for employees to maintain their health and well-being. Connectivity has also changed the way businesses work. You don't need to be restricted to any specific geography as long as you have the ability to perform your roles. So accounting, especially that one that's based on international standard, would be a common language, as we've seen in the video earlier on as well. So you're not restricted to any physical location of your clients. 90% of the ACC members here in Australia are migrants, and they continue to serve clients from the UK, Africa, China, Southeast Asia, while they're actually living over here in Australia. So in our report, we also mentioned that roles may not be clear and defined, and the progression is not going to be linear, as we know from our parents who started, in a very, junior role and slowly progressing through that. That progression may not exist in the next 5 to 10 years. And we know that some of the current roles in the industry will disappear in the next 10 years with automation. We're not trying to predict what they may be called, but we've identified 5 career zones, and they're namely assurance advocates, business transformers, sustainability trailblazers, digital playmakers, and data navigators. So depending on your individual interests and key strengths and quotients, you may undertake roles in these different career zones. So based on some of the feedback from our members, I think the audit sector has been struggling a little while to retain employees because of the long hours and also pressure during the peak audit season. So there's definitely a lot of opportunities in the audit sector, if that's something that might interest you. There's also been a lot of focus on finance business partnering, where the accountant works as a super connector between the management, operation, the suppliers, and the clients. So this role would provide a real-time support, analysis, adding value to the business. So basically, you would have to be able to synthesize all the accounting knowledge that you've learned to provide business with value creation and suggestion. And finally, anything in the digital space, again, Matthias is a great example as a technology director, but anything in the digital space, from robotics process automation, to audit technology, these are definitely some areas of accounting that are highly in demand due to a lack of specialization. So if you're very good at IT, that might be one of the space that you want to consider.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Morris. So Yana, For students that are currently joining us from offshore, of which there are a few, thank you so much to everyone that's engaging in the chat today. They may be considering their current study options. Why would you recommend they study accounting in Australia?
So I suppose overseas students wishing to pursue an accounting qualification here will find that obviously the Australian educational institutions are second to none in the world. And for students considering their migration options, we recommend obviously you do talk to your migration agent, but also to contact the professional designation you are wanting to be part of directly, because we all do have skills assessments and ability to work with you on that. But pretty much, we're equipped with we're equipped with an Australian accounting degree for international students so that they can confidently return home to their countries with a competitive advantage over their peers and continue to advance in their accounting careers. And with that, upon successful completion, you're then obviously eligible to undertake assessment of membership into the professional programs that are offered. But also it supports you with your strong future growth. And I think Australia also has that competitiveness in terms of, as we mentioned before, the above average earnings when you do commence accounting here in Australia. So I think there are a few good points there. You've got a high benchmark of quality when it comes to your higher education degree. You have options of various professional designations that you can undertake membership with, and also with that how your migration might result in that through assessment through us, which we're skilled to do. And then obviously that lifestyle, future growth, and again, if you want a livable wage, an accountant is definitely one of those professions that you can undertake. And as we've seen from Matthias, the diversity in which you can undertake future professional career is quite broad.
Brilliant, thank you so much. And if there are any offshore students currently considering studying in Australia, we've been sharing resources in the chat, so make sure that you check back there, and you may find something useful to help you on your pathway. So a follow-up question, Jana, who are the top accounting employers in Australia or worldwide? Can students seek work experience or professional internships from these organisations?
Yeah, so, and then I'm sure like CA and ACCA, CPA do work with quite a broad range of industry employers, and they range from public sector to your big four, to your banking institutions, and then through to all your public practice, small practice firms, SMEs, not-for-profits. It's endless. It's endless, and there's all opportunities with all of them. And I think the important thing for accounting students to be aware of is that not to put themselves in a box of where they think they should be. It's great to be with your big four and your big banking institutions, but I think what people will find is that what's on offer to them through your public sector, SMEs and not-for-profits, in terms of pay, in terms of professional development and support, is quite equal. So I would say to all of those accounting students out there, start doing your research on industry sectors and what they look like and where you want to be in the future. Where do you want your accounting degree to take you? There are various avenues, there are various industries that you can take it, and there are various job functions and job roles. So I think it's very important that you start doing your research and become aware of what is available to you. And a great way to look for graduate and recruitment positions also is through your universities. They usually log a lot of the positions that are available to you. Be prepared in your second year of uni to really get on top of this if you're wanting to undertake a graduate opportunity too. Don't leave it too late. The competition is strong out there. Employers are looking for that diversity amongst who they employ with graduates. So very much get to know your career services team at your universities. Get to know where they promote all the graduate programs and internship programs that you can apply for. And particularly with the internship programs, if you've got the opportunity to take on more than one, not at one time, but if you can do 1 or 2 or 3 throughout your time at university, spread it amongst different industry sectors to get to know what you really enjoy and where your passion really lies. Because I can guarantee you that probably the majority of students that I've talked to end up being where they didn't think they were going to be, because they decided to take that chance and do that research and look for those diverse industry sectors.
That's brilliant advice, Yana. So it's kind of like tasting all of these different roles and finding what suits you best. We've actually had a question in the Q&A here from May that kind of links to what we were just discussing. May says that they've just completed their accounting bachelor's degree in New South Wales, and they're wondering whether they're in a position where they should be looking for a full-time job, or is it about considering internships at this stage? Yana, did you want to, follow up on that one?
So she had completed, is that correct?
Yes, yeah. So graduated with an accounting bachelor's degree. So what sort of pathway should graduates be looking at right now? Is it a case of, launching straight into looking for a full-time job, or perhaps, dabbling in some internships, which we were just discussing?
I think for them, considering they're now bachelor qualified in accounting, my recommendation would be to look for the graduate opportunities. That's just on my personal experience from what tends to work well and where you're going to get the most value. Internships can be great, and they can also be a great exposure to industry sectors, but they can also be ad hoc in terms of the work that you do undertake within that particular organisation, whereas the graduate programs are a lot more specific. They provide extra training into that role, into that sector. So my advice would be to look for that graduate position and to start applying now, because a lot of them will start to do a end of year intake or have a rolling graduate program intake post their main intake, which is usually around the March-April period here in Australia.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And to May in the audience, I really hope that that's given you a little bit more information on the kind of direction that you should be going in. So James, can you tell us a little bit more about what a professional year is for accounting students? What are the kinds of skills and experience they can expect to gain during their professional year?
Yeah, absolutely. So the professional year program provides accounting graduates with a guided pathway, so from university to employment in Australia, as well as qualifying for migration points towards permanent residency. The focus of the professional year course is about helping graduates become job ready and really ensuring that transition from education to their chosen profession is as smooth and as quickly as possible. The professional year program is structured into 2 stages. So the first stage is on-site learning, obviously not at the moment given what's happened in the last sort of 18 months, which is being done via Zoom, but it covers 8 subjects, each lasting 4 weeks part-time. And this training is designed to provide them with business knowledge and the communication skills to successfully integrate into an accounting role in the Australian workplace. The second stage of the professional year program is actually a work integrated learning placement or internship. And this would typically be 12 weeks in an accounting position within a team under the guidance of a mentor that's clearly laid out in terms of the different things that they'll be exposed to during the course of that. We work, and I think as Yana sort of said, with quite a wide range of different companies, right the way through from sort of multinationals all the way through to some smaller accounting firms themselves. And I think part of that is a great experience for them to actually get to understand what it means working in those types of businesses and also the types of functions that they might be exposed to as part of that. In terms of the skills and experience and what they can expect, we cover a variety of different focus areas, but it's all centered around improving soft skills. The course doesn't look at the technical skills in accounting because that's already been provided through the degree or through the masters. But the soft skills are really there to actually complement what's already been learned in their degree. So some of the focus areas would include Australian business culture, coming from maybe an international background, but also looking at the workplace environment, so things like health and safety. Then it would be looking at things like professional business communication, so how to conduct meetings, how to deliver presentations effectively. And then we'd be looking at more around the job search process. So that would include things such as resume writing, interview skills, so the tips and tricks, but then also best practice in how to actually apply for jobs as part of that.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, James. Building off of kind of what we just discussed, so what a student can expect from their professional year, what are the skills that accountants need in order to succeed in the profession? And do you have any advice for students in how to actually develop these skills in a practical way?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I think for me, there's probably sort of 4 key things, and I'm talking really here from a graduate and early career sort of development perspective. But I mean, working with lots of different companies and mentors as part of this process, I would say there's 4 key things. The first is the ability for the graduates to put the accounting principles into practice. So really moving beyond the theoretical knowledge that's learned at university and actually to apply that in the day-to-day tasks. The second thing would be attention to detail. Obviously, financial information is so critical to areas such as payroll, invoicing, or financial reporting. So the trust from an employee in that process to deliver sort of a high quality of work is really, really important, and really, again, sets out students from each other, when they're completing things like an internship. The third thing for me is Excel, and this might sound very, very basic, but it's so fundamental to a lot of roles. And while a lot of sort of graduates coming out have a really, really sort of basic knowledge and that sort of early stage, that progression to sort of that medium or sort of extended knowledge, it really is a gap, and I think sort of shows what students do in their own time in sort of developing that for themselves. And the last thing for me would be good communication. Because finance roles are often dealing with different departments and also externally with clients, to actually be able to explain some of the accounting processes, principles, or what needs to happen as part of that is really, really important. And it also shows that they can work effectively within a team, which again, when you're working in a larger company, can be quite broad. Knowledge of an accounting system such as Xero or MYOB isn't necessarily a requirement, but it's definitely advantageous when students are sort of starting out. Now, obviously, without having sort of gone through their first job, I think it would be unfair to expect them to have sort of a detailed level of that. But a basic understanding not only shows that they've perhaps done some self-study, but also shows their ability to learn and pick up on systems, no matter what system it is that the company would be using.
Thank you so much, James. If any of our audience members are interested in a little bit more advice regarding the skills that you need as an accountant, you'll see in the chat we've just shared an Insider Guides article that covers the top 10 skills you have to have as an accountant in Australia, where we interviewed someone that works as an audit manager within one of the big 4. So if you're looking for a little bit more advice in that area, I'd really recommend checking out that article. My next question is for you, Matthias. How do students know where they should be studying in Australia? Is finding the right course the most important thing, or how does lifestyle impact this decision?
I think that finding the right course is important, but it's not the most important factor they should consider. I think they should consider in what sector they want to work in or what sector they are interested in. So, for example, if you want to work in banking, you should probably go to Sydney. If you want to work in mining, maybe you should go to Perth. If you want to work in like the space or defense sector or in biotechnology, you should come to Adelaide. All the different regions in Australia, they have different areas that are really strong and that have more opportunities in those areas. So that's definitely something they should consider. Another thing to consider would be, I guess, lifestyle and cost of living. So again, the Melbourne, Sydney, they are quite large cities. They're more expensive. It's more expensive to live in there. There's a lot to do. There, lots of fun. But if you prefer quieter lifestyle and you have a smaller budget, maybe you should consider a place like Adelaide or another regional town.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Matthias. Another question for you I have is, I'd like to know more about the professional accounting bodies. So we've run through them briefly earlier in today's webinar. What are the different options and what are the benefits of becoming a member of one of these professional accounting bodies? And what was your process for you to become a chartered accountant?
Okay. Look, I think that we already kind of spoke a little bit about the process of getting there, and I might defer to Iana and Maurice knowledge on this, since it's been a while since I've been through that process. But for me, the most important most important thing about becoming a member of one of the professional bodies is that it would be really hard to progress a career to the higher levels of the profession without having a qualification like this. When you become, a chartered accountant or a CPA or a member of ACCA, you're pledged into a code of conduct. You are. It's hard to explain. You become like you're bound to be. To practice the profession to a much higher level of a much higher standard than just a normal accountant would have. You also have a minimum requirement for continuous professional development, which is, they take it very seriously. For example, just a couple of years ago, I was audited by the institute. I had to provide evidence of all of the training that I did during the year, just so that they know that I am still studying and still improving myself. And, I'm not just letting my knowledge of accounting just kind of, die out. Look, I think that this sort of control or this nurturing that the professions do to the accountants or to their members, it maintains the reputation of the profession really high in Australia. Qualified accountants are very well regarded, very well respected, and as we heard from Yana before, they're paid very well here in Australia. So I think that it's a no-brainer if you want to have a serious career in accounting to pursue a qualification like that.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Matthias. That actually leads us really nicely into my next question, which is for you, Yana. So Matthias, you were mentioning, proving that you continue to learn. So my question is, they say that as an accountant, you must be dedicated to becoming a lifelong learner. How can accountants new to this field do this? Where can they stay up to date with everything happening in accounting and within the finance world?
Yeah, no, you're right. And all the accounting bodies, and I think it's quite similar, they work on, I know CPA Australia work on, 120 hours of continuing professional development every 3 years. And you're right, members across the professional designations are audited annually to make sure that they are upholding this. And as Matthias said, there is a code of conduct to have that higher standard, to maintain that level of standard across the profession. And that's why we exist. We exist to advocate and communicate those regulations and policies so that employers know that they're employing people with a bachelor's degree, and two, they're employing someone who's furthered their education and their career journey by undertaking a professional designation. So for professionals, lifelong learning is typically referred to obviously as continuing professional development, or CPD. And I know CPA and the other professional designations provide our members with resources and support to actively maintain their CPD and continue to grow throughout their career. So once you're part of a professional designation, there are boundless and endless amounts of resources that members can access, both complimentary and via small fees through training, development, workshops, business journals, accounting journals, local and national events and networking opportunities that extend that learning, courses, events, mentoring is a really big thing across the professional designations, both at that entry level and at that mid-career level. And also career navigator tools. So I think, once you do join a professional designation and you do achieve that designation post the program you undertake, then you are required to become that lifelong learner and continue that continuing professional development. And the best access and the most reliable access as well to intelligence and academic and business journals is via your professional designation to start with, because that comes with your membership. That's usually a free resource that you have access to. So definitely a great starting point.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Yana. My final question here is for Matthias, and then we'll launch into some of the Q&A. Matthias, what would be your best advice for international students eager to study and work as accountants in Australia?
I think the most important thing to separate yourself from the competition when you're looking for a job is to try to get some practical work experience, as quickly as you can. As James mentioned before, if you work on like your Excel skills, or perhaps look at zero, get zero certified, there's nothing stopping you from searching for a job as a bookkeeper, volunteering for a not-for-profit that needs someone helping keep their books, or trying to find something that will give you a little bit of real life practical work experience. That's really well regarded by recruiters in the space.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Matthias. And thank you to all of our panelists. So these were all the questions that we organised earlier on. Thank you so much. Now we are going to get to the live Q&A. We only have about 5 minutes, but we'll try and get through as many as possible. Thank you so much to everyone that's been sending them in. A number of our wonderful panelists have actually been answering the questions live, so they've been typing out responses, but we'll try and get to a couple of them now. So the first question I'd like to get to today was from Xiao Yun, who said, if I want to apply for jobs in the Big Four accounting firms in Australia, which plays a more important role, my GPA or my school's reputation? Who would like to try and tackle that one? Morris, yeah?
I might have a go. I think it's an interesting question, particularly coming from an international student as well, because when we're talking about entry to Big Four in various countries, it could differ. So I know in a lot of the Asian countries, your qualification, your GPA would mean a lot. But I think over the years in Australia, I think there has been more of a holistic approach. So it's not just purely looking at your GPA, but also your core curricular activity. Have you been taking on any leadership roles in your school while you're studying at university? Have you taken on any internships, for example? Have you actually put yourself out for some of the leadership roles in organization? So I think it's not just purely looking at your GPA and your performance, but really, and definitely nothing to do with your university's reputation. It's all about you. So it depends on how much you're putting yourself out there. So if you're still a student at university, I think it's important for you to get yourself involved in student societies, and even doing volunteer work as well, going out to the community, supporting people, get some experience. And that's definitely, to Matthias' point, that's going to really differentiate you from other students and not really just depending on your GPA or your university's reputation.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Morris. That leads us really nicely into a question here we've gotten from Vicky, who said, I'm interested to hear what international accounting graduates can be doing while studying to help them get a job or to help them get a head start in the Australian accounting industry. Jana, would you like to start us off? And then I'd really like to hear from James and Matthias as well and get their input.
Yeah, look, and I think this feeds into the previous question in terms of being involved. So if you can be involved at your university, take on those voluntary roles, whether it be through your local cultural associations or sporting associations or whatever you're interested in, these are all, I suppose, the bits that make the difference when it comes to those interviews, because at the end of the day, employers are really looking out for that X factor, who has gone above and beyond, who has dealt with teams and groups and works autonomously and has those soft skills, because everyone who's applying for a job at the end of their bachelor's degree have all got that degree. And so they need that point that's going to differentiate themselves from everyone else who holds that exact same degree and comes out just exactly qualified. So I think it's really important to make sure that you do branch out and take on some responsibilities through your employer or like I said, voluntary, just so that that's what's going to get you an interview in the end.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jana. James, did you have anything that you wanted to add in regards to, giving yourself a head start, making sure that you're standing out to employers?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I agree with everything that Jana said. I think, a lot of students coming out with a similar degree creates quite a level playing field. So because the graduate market is quite competitive, it is about needing to sort of stand out. I think making sure not to limit it just to, I suppose, accounting development as well. Soft skills are really, really important in the modern day workplace. So I think making sure, as you said, with getting involved in groups and sort of extracurricular activities is really important to be able to kind of add depth to the resume. And then outside of that, I think it comes down to getting as much experience as you can through sort of an internship is one option. or shadowing, someone who is a qualified accountant for even just a short period of time starts to build up your knowledge of the inside of a business and how it sort of works in the real world. So combining that with some self-study for me is a number of different things that you can do to kind of just keep sort of building on what's there from having the degree.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, James. And finally, Matthias, anything you wanted to add to that final question about what international graduates can be doing to get them a head start?
I think that what Yana and James said, it's pretty comprehensive answer. I just want to add that when you're applying for a job, you should just take the time to research the employer thoroughly. Do they have financials published in their website? Just look through them. Like, you really get in there, try to learn as much as possible about it. The more you prepare, the better it's going to be your chance to stand out in an interview. Apart from that, from being prepared and following all of those points that Yana and James have said, just persistence as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Matthias. And that brings us to the end of today's webinar. We had a number of really, really good questions come through. We're just not going to have time to get to them. So there was one here from who said, how does fintech relate to accounting? A great question from Louisa regarding how to find a graduate job in Australia. Most seem to be for Australian citizens only. Everyone that has attended today's webinar, you're actually going to get a copy of today's recording in an email. And in that email, we're going to answer a couple of your questions as well. So thank you so much. We're really sorry we didn't manage to get to all of them today, but we'll get some of our panelists to answer some of those questions, and you'll get them in that email with the recording. I'd like to thank today's sponsors, PTE Academic and the ACCA. And I'd also like to extend an enormous thank you to all of our speakers today. Thank you so much for being with us. I really hope that our audience have gotten some information out of this. There's some excellent resources that were shared. We tried to get to as many questions as possible. So thank you so much. And a final thank you to our wonderful audience, as always, from wherever you're joining us in the world. We really appreciate you attending today's webinar. Please join us for our next webinar, which will be in partnership with Australia X. So we'll see you all next time. Keep your eyes on the Insider Guides International Student social media, and we will share all the information on the next one. Thank you so much, everyone, and we'll see you next time.